Well, what's going on, social media family? It's your main man, Joe Dupree, 100 BLK, the Black Station, with my good friend, Edward J. Brown from
Yes,
Positive
sir.
Choices
Yes, sir.
in the building on this 8th day of November. Before you know it, it will be Thanksgiving. Before you know it,
Thanksgiving,
it will be
man.
Christmas. Before you know it, it will be 2024.
Can
But
you
we are
believe it?
here. I can't, my brother. Time, funny how time flies.
Yes, indeed. Before you know it, we will be talking about new year, new me, resolutions and what I'm gonna
All
do
that,
different in 2024.
yeah, all
So
that.
all that good stuff, brother. I am so glad to see you with your Southern University attire on because before we get started, let me go ahead on and say this. I see you laughing. Um, I am in some places famous, in some places infamous
Right, that
for
part.
trash talk. And considering my tenure at Alcorn State University, I had some trash talking coming out of my mouth last week as my Jags was supposed to travel to the reservation to play the Braves.
Uh-huh.
And unfortunately, only one team seemed to have shown up,
Yeah,
and that was the
true.
Braves. So I'm going to say what I said all this week live on this podcast that I'm not hard to find. So I stood up and I took my licks from the Brave Nation as my Jaguars did not only fall, but they did not even show up. And they took a whooping. They took a whipping from the Braves, unlike I've seen a Jaguar team take in many, many, many years. So,
Mm-hmm.
all the Braves that know me, and to all of the Jaguars fans who know me, you know I'm not hard to find. So, I'm battered and bruised, but I am still here. So, um, congratulations to the Braves on the victory. And to my Jaguar Nation, we got to do better. And that's all the time I'm gonna take
Yeah.
my life again for that fiasco that went on last weekend. But I will say this though. I'm beginning to have a different appreciation because I'm always the one that says nobody hosts like the Jags host. I have to admit, not I, you and I, we received the utmost hospitality
We
from the
did. We did.
They treated us so good. Here's the thing now: pre and post whooping.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
very true. Very true.
pre and post whooping, they treated us really, really, really good up there on the reservation. Not that I expected anything different from because prior to these 12 years at Alcorn, I had no relationship with any other HBCU. So other than that 1 week when they played my Jags, I absolutely love the Braves, and I appreciate being there and what we share as a faculty member of the Braves. So there's one of the people. I'm gonna take a minute, and I rarely do this. I'm gonna take a minute and talk about this lady, Miss Jones, right here. When I first landed at Alcorn, not knowing what to expect, the love she showed me and the guidance she gave me is the reason her and Dr. Bell and is the reason I'm still a faculty member at Alcorn State University. Miss Jones and Miss Bell. She told me something that I never forgot, brother. And we're
Come
gonna
on.
put it out here. This is what she said. And she had it up on her door. And I remember that's the first I said, can I borrow that? It said, lack of preparation on your part does
Uh,
not constitute an emergency on my part. When I
that
saw
part
that,
right there.
I said, man, I got to have that. And I've been learning from her since. So I love you. I love Miss Jones. And she is somebody that means the world to me. So other than that, brother, what's been going on, man?
Well, brother, as you know, of course, it's the 8th day of November. We've got 10 more days until election season here in Louisiana. There are runoffs going on. Once again, I do not tell people who to vote for, but I do say the following. You need to get engaged. get informed, get registered, and go vote. You need to find out which candidate is speaking to the issues that are important to you and the ones that not only speaking to it, but the ones that you believe will deliver on their promises. Because many times people make a lot of promises. And then we wind up, after allowing those folks to make those promises and us buying those promises, we don't, for some odd reason, hold them accountable to keep those promises. Many a times people in communities of colors wind up being the deciding factor for races, and promises are made, but promises are not delivered. So all I encourage folks to do is to please go vote. Because right now, early voting looks like, when it comes down to community of color, you're looking at about 19%. And, and there are folks who are happy that there's 19%, because that they say that's the new norm. That's better than was expected. To me, 19% is horrible, period.
Yeah, that's not good at all.
Yeah, that's just hard. I don't, there's no new norm to it. It's not, we're not doing this on the bell curve. If you're telling me 100 people should be voting and only 19 of them are voting, that's horrible, period. When it should be, we should at least have 50% of the people who are registered to vote to go vote. So we have 100 people who could vote, at least 50 of them should show up to the poll and cast some type of vote.
Especially when we understand the importance of voting.
Come on.
You're going to put people in office that's going to make decisions for you. Don't you want those people to at least think a little bit like you, have some of the same agendas as you? Or you can have no input in voting and have absolutely an idiot in place making decisions for you.
And
I want to have something to say about that myself.
And what saddens me, and this does have a lot to do, this is Wellness Wednesday, where your mental health matters. And I know a lot of people's mental health has been all over the place with these elections, but let's just be real about this. And family, I want y'all to hear it from me. And I completely feel this way, and I could care less who's in office. At the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, why is it that we don't see folk until it's time for elections?
Especially in our community.
Folk tell you, man, I love y'all. Y'all mean the world to me. All this, that, these, those, everything and the other. But you don't see them until election time. I see all these pictures of folks taking pictures with folks, but you wasn't taking pictures with folks until you decided to run. To be exact, some folk, I asked the question, how many folk that look like me have you helped before you decided to run? They tell me if you were running a corporation, I started asking the question, how many people of color were in your corporation before you started to run? And if the number is 0, then how all of a sudden are you going to start making promises about what you're going to do for me and my people? Or do you just need me and my people's votes? So once again, family, dig a little bit deeper than a bottle of water, a chicken dinner, and a person telling you that this is what I'm going to do. Look at what they've done. Look at what they've done. That's all I tell folks. The best way to figure out what people are going to do is kind of look and see what they have done
in the past.
So, we want your mental health to be intact in all this, and understand this, family. We as a people need to stop saying 19% is acceptable. If 100 people should vote, we should, to me, if 100 people are eligible to vote, 100 people should vote. But realistically, I would love to see at least half those folks show up to the polls. Really, in my world, I like to see about 80 or 90% of them show up.
Absolutely.
So with no further ado, it's time that we get on some mental health issues because your mental health does matter. And without any further ado, let me turn over to my good friend from Positive Choices Counseling Service, my good brother, Edward J. Brown.
All right, brother. Well, as usual, it's always a pleasure to be here every Wednesday to kind of shed light on some things that I think people don't talk enough about. And these are mental health issues. And some of the things that we talk about, when I see people who watch the podcast, they always say, I never really thought about how much what you talk about was a mental health issue.
Right.
Like today. Here's the thing. Today, I want to talk about something that I believe we've all experienced, we've all gone through, and maybe going through right now, but nonetheless is very profound. and that is the topic of deception. Now it's interesting that, you know how we always say it seems like the topics for these podcasts every Wednesday choose themselves.
Come on.
You started talking about the political climate that we live in our community. Here's the interesting thing. And we're going to talk about this. That's why it's going to fly by tonight. Because like we always do, we talk about two halves. The first half of this podcast, I want to talk about what is deception. All right, let's talk about it, because
what is it?
Well, here's where it gets a little everybody. We have to try to come up with a uniform definition of what is deception. So I'm going to throw this out there. Is deception, in your opinion, are you being deceptive when you omit certain information? Okay, let's look at it from a political climate. We have these folks wanting our votes. We have these folks coming up to us, and they quickly will tell you what they did.
Come on.
Okay, this is what I did. This is what I did. This is what I did. But they conveniently leave out what they didn't do.
Oh.
Okay. So is that a form of deception? Because we're going to go into it from a personal aspect. For example, if, you know, someone comes up to you and you say, well, what'd you do last night? Well, I went out to eat, then ran a couple of errands, and then I went home. Now, they didn't tell you after they went out to eat, those couple of errands they ran was at the strip club. They just said, I ran a couple of errands. Were they being deceptive? Because we have a tendency to create definitions of what's truthfulness and what's deceptive based on its convenience.
So hold on. Okay, here's what
hold on. Here we go.
I got to hit you with this one. When folk do stuff like that, you know what they normally try to say? That really was none of your business. What I would do. See, not only do they have as you say, deception, they have what I call deflection. That they will deflect. Absolutely. You know, here what make me laugh with folk. Folk will talk about folk getting laid off at certain places. But if they work for somebody who laying somebody off, they won't talk about the people that got laid off on their job.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
They'll talk about, you know, over here. See, if I work for the cab company and the boss of the cab company lay everybody off, but me, I ain't telling y'all about how the cab company boss laid everybody off. But if the airport guy who I don't like lay off some folks, I'm all up on here talking about, you know, they laid off 5 good brothers over at the airports. So they showed me it. They laid off about 5. See, we quick to talk about what we feel is relevant, to put the spotlight on what we feel needs to have a spotlight on, where we can say we brought that issue to the head. See, we one that showed you what was going on, but we ain't.
So is that deception?
Okay.
Is that deception?
Hold on. So let me hit you with another thing. Another thing I'm getting tired of, and I got a good friend on here. She big on bullying. Miss Shauna Sias. She on the feed. And hello, Miss Shauna. How you doing? You know, another thing that I'm really trying to get a clear understanding on, and nobody really gives this to me, is when what you do to others is done to you, then all of a sudden you call foul. But when it's done, when you doing it to others, you doing the right thing. See, that's another thing that could be kind of be a little deceptive, because you're like, wait a minute, isn't the same thing you calling them folks out on the same thing you just did to them folk?
Well, that's where we as therapists, we call reframing. We put things in a perspective that shines it in a different light when it's us. Now, I'll show you what I'm talking about. Now, I use this example when I do presentations. Do you remember back in the day, you could walk into a supermarket, they used to have this big candy display, and you were supposed to take the bag and put the candy in the bag and weigh it, and then you paid for it at the counter. Now, I've literally, growing up as a child, seen adults do this. they'll go up and they'll grab one or two of the peppermints and put them in their purse or in their pocket. And well, I didn't need a whole bag. I only needed just a few. And as a child, I started saying, but isn't that stealing?
Oh, wait a minute.
Well, I'm just asking, is that we have a tendency to reframe things when now we live in this society and we go in a whole nother direction with this podcast because we have these double standards. A man that has a lot of women is a player. A woman that has a lot of men is a whore. So we encourage our sons to engage in, adolescent sex. But if your daughter has a condom in her purse, we tear the house up. So I think the same thing applies when we sit here and we talk about being deceiving. If you done came from the supermarket or you done came from the mall and you got that $300 pair of shoes in your trunk and you're going to leave them in the trunk until Mr. go to work, then you bring them in the house. What's the difference when Mr. buys this lawnmower and you're like, well, you didn't talk to me about lawn. You should have told me. You didn't want to tell me. Well, it's not about not wanting to tell you. So we have to sit down sometimes and have a clear definition of what it means to be deceiving.
Ooh, hold it.
Now,
hold the presses. Hold the presses. Hold the
Okay.
presses on that one right there. So the main ingredient I'm hearing in all of this is a lack of communication.
Well, it involves communication,
So
because lack of could be, but guess what? If you just downright lie, did you go to the strip club? No. We're communicating real well. You hear me, I hear you. Did you go to the strip? Nope, I did not.
So you use the L word. Wait a minute. So, and a lot of folks, watch this. A lot of folks, they tried to measure the weight of the lie. I even had folks say, my lie wasn't as bad as your lie. But the last time I checked, a lie is a lie.
Well, it's not even just about lie. It's about a lot of things in life. When, as you said earlier, when it's done to you, it's much more intense and much worse than when you do it. So as we talk about these issues during this podcast every Wednesday, we bring it to light because a better you is what we're trying to create.
Because a healthy you is a better you.
And sometimes this podcast requires us to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. So what we have to get to is that point in our lives close to what we call self-actualization and say, you know what? There's good and bad in everyone. Even me.
Come on.
Even
Start
me.
with self.
And when you get to that point where you can say, I'm not walking around here floating. I walk.
Right.
I don't have a halo on. It's a hat.
Come on.
Then you get more in tune with the best you that you can be, because you realize just because I've done bad does not mean I am bad.
Come on, speak on that.
Not because, we have a tendency to be really hard on other people, but overlook our own shortcomings.
Hold it. Stop. Bookmark that right there. Okay. I have a simple saying. In communities of color, we have PhDs when it comes down to tearing each other down. We can come out with some of the most eloquent words and enunciate so perfectly when it comes down to us tearing each other down. But when it comes down to us celebrating and lifting each other up, we sound like we in kindergarten. I hear a bunch of A, B, Google, Gaga, ooh, it's like a philosophy that we have is you can do good, but you just can't do better than me. And if you're doing better than me, watch this. Things that I cannot explain, I will find a way to talk about and complain.
Well, and to piggyback on that, we have to look at, we do not want to do anything, say anything, be a part of anything that will shed a negative light on us. Because we, in our mind, this is where it gets very clinical. We, in our mind, want people to have thoughts and ideas about us that we don't have about ourselves. You know, because if you understood, no one believes you're perfect, then you would be okay with, hey, listen, because I tell people all the time, I'm in the gym for me. I'm not in the gym for anybody else. So when you look at me and say, well, boy, you sure could stand up in my mind. Hey, I don't need no help knowing what I need to do. Thank you for your opinion, but I'm good. But we have a tendency to want people to think things about us that we don't think about ourselves. So to actually accept our shortcomings is really hard for people to do.
Talk that talk, Ed.
I'm just being clinical. It's hard for us to accept certain things about ourselves, but we want people to believe that.
Talk that talk, Ed.
And this is what I've always said, and it's not trying to be ugly to anybody, but this is what I say. You ain't never seen a fat personal trainer.
Ooh.
So it's okay for you to say, I want this personal trainer because I'm first judging him by the way he look. I would like that over here. It would be okay with me with that over here. But we walk around and we pretend. I had an incident to occur, and one of my students I had already been talking about getting rid of my hair.
Come on, talk to him.
So when I started at Alcorn State University, I had what later on, the 2 years I was there, was called the George Jefferson thing going on. So I had this big curly hair around here, and this was like you see it now. And man, I was going to the barber and was getting it lined up, and he never said, I really think you should just let that go. Until one day, one of my students said, yo, Mr. Brown, you look like George Jefferson. And when I went home and I looked in the mirror after I contemplated giving her an F, I went and I looked in the mirror and I said, well, it might be time for me to let this go. Now, it was not, her opinion was not taken in negative. It was not.
Come on.
What it was taken because I'm always striving for self-actualization, which is just a fancy word for being the best me I can be at that particular time.
Speak on it.
So when we start talking about deception, which was this podcast is about tonight, we're talking about the too free-handed definition of what being deceiving really is. Is hiding the credit card statement, being deceptive. I'm just omitting certain information.
Ooh, sheesh.
Is it? So it depends. It is definitely a good idea to define in any relationship that you're in. Because as faculty and as students, I see my brother on here, they will definitely say, well, look, I miss your class because I had some personal stuff going on. Okay. As an instructor, we're like, okay. But the personal stuff was you was hungover from the weekend.
So hold on.
So is that deceptive?
Well,
it's personal stuff.
It is. And see, once again, I think this is a deep dive in you doing your own self-checkup. Because watch this. I used to have a real simple saying back in the day, because I used to be pretty good with lying. And I ain't got no problem.
You're a former recovering liar?
No, hold it. I am a completely recovered liar, because I realized this. And here's what I realized. And hopefully this will help some other folks on here who are lying also. Because a lot of folks, you know what gets me with a liar? A liar will tell you about everybody else lying, but they'll never tell you about the lies they done told. So
Hey.
with that being said, a long time ago, somebody blessed me with something. They said you can fool a lot. You can fool some of the people some of the time. If you're real good, you can fool a lot of the people a lot of the time. And if you're excellent, you can fool all the people all the time. But two people you will never fool is yourself and God. Y'all both know the truth.
Wow.
Now, the sad thing is, here's where the mental health part comes in. Some of us lie so well that our lies become a truth to us. That we don't realize that we have really bought into our own lies.
I had a gentleman ask me about 15 years ago, what is a compulsive liar? Is it someone that lies a lot? Not exactly. According to DSM and the common practice, is compulsive lying brings about absolute believing some of the lies that you're telling. You know, you've lied so much that you even begin to believe the lies that you tell. So the reason I wanted to talk about deception today was because I think people now, you remember I said we have to really, because I'm getting ready to touch, you know how we always say we step on some toes.
Right.
Okay. I'm getting ready to say some things that may make people say, now you better go it on with all that.
But okay. Hold it. But hold on. Here's one thing that we have to, let's give our disclaimer. The reason we do this is because the truth will set you free. And understand this. Many a times, the biggest problem with us in our communities are we want people to tie with us and not tell us the truth. Because as they said in A Few Good Men, you can't handle the truth. Because the truth is, you really can't handle the truth. That's why suicide, that's why depression, that's why murder is so big in community of colors. Because here's the real truth about it. The truth is, you should have never messed with that man's wife. You should have never messed with that woman's husband.
I'm so glad you said
that. Did what you did, but you can't handle the truth. And somewhere in your wrongdoing, you try to justify your wrongdoing. You know, it kills me when a person sits there and prays for another man's or woman's spouse and says to themselves, you know, that he wasn't supposed to be with her. She wasn't supposed to be with him, you know, and really think that God, let me say this, that God is somehow really co-signing on your mess. See, today, somebody asked me something. They said, man, I thought you said God told you XYZ. I said, you know what? I got a new statement with that. I believe I heard a voice and I believe it was God. But the result of what I told you will let me know if it was God for real. Because I said, some of these voices we be hearing that we be proclaiming, oh, I heard the voice of God. That wasn't the voice of God. Oh. You know how I know it wasn't the voice of God? Because the end result wasn't a godly result.
Okay.
And that's all I got to say about that. Back to Brother Brown.
Hey, listen. I think that I wanna, you know, when you think about what you just said and compare it to what we're talking about, we have to really go and start to look at, remember we're talking about your personal definitions of dishonesty
and deception.
Now I'm about to ask you something that let me start where I remember when I was at Southern University. I had a friend of mine. He was from New York. And he said, let's go to the party. I said, okay. Now you have to understand there's a lot of self-disclosure in this podcast every week. So anybody that watches this, I hope you know, it really won't matter if you think any different of me for using this. I don't use names, but I will definitely give you honest situations. So we're going to a party at LSU, and he decides to take a sock and he rolls the sock up and he sticks it in his pants. And I'm sitting there as he's getting ready, and I'm like, what are you doing? He said, man, it's going to make the girls look at my groin area. And I'm looking at it, and I'm like, are you out of your mind? And he's like, don't you worry about me. You pay attention to what you do. And I'm like, but that's not real. That's you. What are you doing
It's not
Okay.
the truth.
It ain't the truth. And lo and behold, we go over to the Jim Homer at LSU, and sure enough, man, he was the talk of a lot of the young ladies we walk past.
Mm.
And I was like, wow. I mean, I was like, it's kind of creepy, but okay, if you know, that's your thing, you do your thing. Was that being deceiving, or is it any more deceiving
Dan?
than the ladies with push-up bras
Mm.
or the butterflies on the eyes?
Mm.
Now we can say, oh, all of that's fashion,
Mm.
but is it honest? Now we may be being lighthearted about it, but we have to understand that the young people have watched and started doing things that is transcending generation, fashion, and ideas.
Come on, speak on it.
Okay? Because if I can't fabricate, I may feel a little less of myself.
Correct.
That's
Correct.
why it's important that we talk about these issues and say things like, well, should we teach our young people that if you don't have it, you can buy it?
Mm.
In other words, if you don't have the boobs, you can buy it. If you don't have the butt, you get the panties with the pads in it. And fellas, you can stick socks in your pants. Or do we say that's not really you? And you being how you are is okay.
Well, you know, the craziest thing, Ed, I
My
just
brother
today had a
down.
conversation with some young folks about that
Mhm.
because I'm a part of a youth advisory council. And one of the things I asked them was, how do you see it? From what perspective do you see it? And it's crazy because we live in the Bible Belt. The South is the Bible Belt.
Mhm.
And in the Bible, it says, when God made you the way he made you, you are a perfect work. And he said, you're good.
Mhm.
It didn't
So
say
why
that
do we have young ladies that don't want to go to school because they can't get their hair done the way they want it?
Mm. So it didn't say that we shouldn't maintain the temple. Didn't say that we couldn't naturally work on making the temple right. Some of us don't, some of us be a little out of shape. But then when people start surgically altering what they say God made, which was perfection, then it makes me ask myself, and it's just me, and I'm not body shaming nobody. I mean,
It's about
because
deception.
at the end of the day, there may be medical issues why you need to do what you did to change what you need to change. But I just asked myself, and I'm not trying to be, and deception can be used in this, because once again, if we so big into this thing we call the word, and the word say this is how it is, why is it that when the word either checks us or corrects us, we try to say, well, that word just really wasn't for me?
That goes back to the whole purpose of this podcast. We're
The
talking
deception.
about, can we accept things the way they are, or is deception just it's inevitable?
Right.
If we cannot accept things the way they are, and I use that issue of, I've had young ladies that refuse to go to school because they wouldn't come to class because they couldn't get the braids that they wanted, and they didn't want to look the way they looked with their natural hair. And we don't want to see it as deception, so we want to see it as, well, they just don't like this. But we have to look at creating a mindset within our young people of accepting the truth, whether it is socially acceptable or not. I remember I had a debate with a person. There's a young lady who won the top model, and she has this skin condition that escapes me right now. Where
Verlago?
yes,
Verlago?
yes, and I was like, now, are they giving her this because they believe she is the most beautiful woman in the contest? Or are they giving it to her just to say, we accept imperfection as beautiful? We had the guy who was in Dancing with the Stars. He had one leg and one arm.
Mm.
Now, he didn't win, but he was in the finals. I think that when we start to preach and talk about, okay, let's not create a ideology of deception and say you are okay just the way you are. You called it body shaming. I don't think we're just talking about body shaming. We're talking about a general idea of acceptance of self. Even if you say, listen, I eat too much sweets. I'm not going to lie to myself. I'm not going to say anything bad, but I like sweets. That's a problem that I have. I'm not going to lie about it. I'm not going to be deceiving because I'm not going to lie about the issue. Too often we change the narrative. The great philosopher Ric Flair says, when they get the answer, I change the question.
Mm.
And I think we started talking tonight about coming to grips with the fact that we have a tendency to be okay with deceiving not just people, but ourselves. So I wanted us to come up with a across the board definition of deception. Like I said, is omitting information deceiving? When you leave out certain things, is it deceiving?
Okay, so let's put it from this position. You may be able to omit some certain things, but what was the intent when you omitted what you omitted? Okay, so I think let me go back to my law enforcement days. You can sometimes saying nothing is saying everything, and sometimes saying everything is saying nothing. I always used to say
nothing lying.
But watch this. Sometimes, now listen to what I just said. Somebody might need to bookmark that one. Sometimes saying nothing is saying everything. And sometimes saying everything, having diarrhea of the mouth, is literally saying nothing. I would always say the one that's talking the most is really the one trying to divert us away from what's really going on.
No answer is an answer. Yeah, no answer is an answer. You know, so as we talk about it, and as we process the issues that's on the table in this podcast today, you said something that's very profound from a clinical perspective. When you say is omitting information, this was going to be the closing part of the podcast, so we can get into that now. Definition of lying, definition of omitting information comes down to what was the intent. We always say, if the intent is not malicious, then it's not a bad thing. I don't always agree with that, but I definitely understand that concept. Omitting information with the intent of being deceptive is lying. There's as simplistic as it gets. Saying something with the intent of deceiving is lying. So if you omit information, and here's the thing, children do it a lot. Al Capone had a saying where he says, if you lie, it's a sign that you're afraid of something, be it a consequence, an action. So therefore, I'm not scared of anything, so I don't lie. We have a tendency to not think about intent. Is the intent malicious? Is the intent something that you intend to be deceptive? Now we've defined a general definition of what it means to be deceiving or deceptive. So us being and making light of my friend with the sock, or ladies with push-up bras and this plastic, because are you going to wake up to the same thing you went to bed with? All of these type of things. If the intent is malicious, now you have to look at yourself. You have to look at the person that you're trying to be. I'm intentionally trying to be deceiving to you.
Mm.
Okay. And once we get that under our belt, then we can be more honest and we can be more open towards ourselves and why we do and say the things that we do and say.
Well, let's just be honest. I have discovered, and especially we can talk about like on platforms like this, our weekly podcast. A lot of us, and it should be, and I'm pretty sure they're going to come up within some years with a clinical definition of what this is, because it's a disorder. A lot of us got the like, share, click disorder. That's what it is. It's a disease. I got to make it that they like it, they got to share it, and they got to click on it. The like, share, click. Because some folks, they live for like, share, click. If they don't get a like, share, click, they not living.
Wow.
They not living. They not living. You can listen to their conversation. I literally sit at the table where a person said, oh, I saw that and only 5 people liked it, and maybe it got 1 share and they probably got no clicks. And that was the whole conversation. And I was like, there's a serious disorder called like, share, click, because folks measure who they are, some by how many likes, how many shares, and how many clicks they get. And family, that's sad.
Well, it's real though. It's a real. It's the times that we live in. We talk about, I see people all the time, and they say, I'm so tired of hearing about the good old days and how things were back in the day and how things were when people were coming up. We're not living in that time anymore, and that's true. Some of the same issues still exist. Bullying still exists.
Come on.
But the difference between bullying now is that if I'm in the room with 10 people and I tell 10 people I don't like you, 10 people know. But if I post it on social media, not 10,000 people know. So there's a difference. If I'm talking about you and you feel uncomfortable, you feel bullied, imagine how you feel when you start to see people you don't even know commenting on thoughts and things about you. So yeah, things are different. Bullying, there was you either fought, you ran. But now you either fight, you run, and now suicide is an option. So we are living in different times.
Come on, speak on.
We're living in different times now that we have to take into account the magnitude of our actions. Like right now, if I was on this podcast and only one person was on, but you and I, we look at the numbers later on and you see hundreds of people. If we were up here spewing nonsense or foolishness, we're really doing more harm than we are good.
Come on, that part.
So we ask and we talk about issues and topics like tonight, and we say, look at what your actions give out, the energy you put. How are people being impacted by what you're doing? Your deception, is it malicious intent? Is it malicious in its intent? Now you have to start looking at it differently. Well, I didn't hurt nobody because I was only lying on me. No. Malicious in its intent. Its intent was intended to do harm some kind of way.
Correct.
Be it giving misinformation.
Come on.
Be it, whatever it is. We have to start taking accountability for our actions. That is the reason we started Mental Health Monday that went into Wellness Wednesday.
Come on.
And we do this every Wednesday, not for likes, not for shares, but to give off information that people can use on a daily basis. Right. I'm okay with saying, you know what? I have an issue with saying certain things. So instead of lying about it, I'm just not going to say anything.
Right.
I refuse to be malicious in my intent about a particular topic or towards a particular person.
Listen to what I'm about to say. And here comes the part that's going to really hurt some folks' feelings. So let me step on all y'all toes.
Not again.
Okay. Everybody lies. Men lie. Women lie. Everybody lie. Here's the problem. y'all need to stop quantifying and measuring the level of your lies. See, you'll lie, and then you'll turn around and talk about somebody else and say they're a bigger liar than the lie you told. But a lie is a lie. See, it's like sin is sin. Guess what? All sin is sin, no matter what level the sin is. It could be a big sin or a little sin. But here's what everybody forgets about. No matter what the level of the sin or the lie or the deception, there comes consequences. So you might tell a little lie that will come with little consequences. You might tell a little lie that might result in big consequences. Because guess what? All it takes is the wrong lie at the wrong time to the wrong person, and all of a sudden somebody's life could be lost. And I've seen it happen. Oh, I saw so-and-so talking to so-and-so. And then somebody goes and kills somebody because they thought that you were talking to their old lady or their old man. When the truth was, they did see you just talking, but you wasn't talking, trying to, all you were doing maybe asking directions, how the day was, how you doing. But see, many a times that's our problem. We so busy spreading mess and so busy trying to be messy that we don't try to take time out and think about the consequences of some of the words that come out of our mouth.
Man, now that right there was intense and it was impactful because it's true. We have to really get to that point in our lives where we start to take responsibility for what we say. And that's only the point. We talked about deception and lying, but I'm trying to make everyone take a step back and say, okay, I'm responsible for what comes out of my mouth, because what we have to stop doing is saying, well, they know how I am and they just got to accept me for the way I am. No, you're rude. You're mean in your delivery. And that's something you have to look at and you have to accept. No, we don't have to accept your meanness and your malicious intent because that's just who you are. No, we don't have to do that. You want us to do that because it helps you justify your wrongdoing. I can say no just as polite as I can say no when I want to be mean. But at the end of the day, it's still saying no. So now when we look at, as we wrap up, because we're coming to a close, as we start to wrap up this whole idea of being the best version of ourselves, and how does being deceptive come to play, we have to look at what is your reasoning behind what you're doing. What's your reasoning? Here's the thing. You said it earlier. If someone is being nosy, why not just say, I'd rather not answer that because I don't really know if that's where you and I are or what we need to be talking about. Instead of omitting information, I don't feel comfortable. I have a very good friend of mine. He's a brother to me.
Come on.
I'll never forget. I didn't know how to accept the fact that one day we're riding in the car and I started talking about work. And I started talking about how I thought I deserved a raise. I thought I was doing, quality of work that I should be bumped up the pay scale.
No, compensate.
And that brother looked at me, and keep in mind, we've been knowing each other for decades. And he said, I don't feel comfortable talking about money with you. And I was like, what? This me? He said, no, I don't want to talk about what I make, and I don't want to hear about what you make. I just don't want to hear about it. And it was so shocking to me because I thought I knew him, but for him, he wasn't going to say or make up something or lie about something. He put it on the table, clear and cut. I don't want to talk about what we make to one another.
Hey, and
here we are 30 years later, and we never have.
Hold up. And Ed, sometimes you know, today I was given a task, and you had given me a task when I saw you last weekend. You know, I was fortunate to be able to almost fulfill the task you gave me, but I was given a task today that I looked at for an hour. And after looking at it for an hour, guess what I had to do? I had to reach out to the person that gave me the task. And I said, I can't fulfill that task.
I can't do it.
I said, now I can help maybe facilitate managing the task or having some enough individuals together to put the task, but I can't do this task by myself. The truth would listen, this is wrote on my desk and on a mirror that I look at every morning. The truth will set you free. Sometimes you got to tell folk what you are expecting of me, I cannot do. You have put an expectation on me that I cannot deliver, because many a times the mistake we make is when folk ask us to do certain things, in order not to disappoint them, we say, no problem, I got that, knowing you ain't got that. And there comes the rub and the problem, because now they're expecting delivery, and you already can't deliver on what they ask because you're not capable. You don't have the capacity. And we've got to stop that. And that is a way that we are deceiving ourselves, because sometimes you got to look good self in the mirror and say, today, I'm not going to let nobody put no more on me than I can bear.
We talked about that last week. What happens with failure? We talked about failure last week. So, I mean, I think as we start to wrap up, brother, we got to look at it in terms of, am I being honest with myself?
Come on.
Am I okay with what my intent is when I speak to other people and I'm not quite as honest as, am I hiding something? Am I guarding something? Am I protecting something? Or am I just being, malicious in my intent? I hope that everybody that was present on this podcast tonight, take a minute, look at yourself and say, because I had a colleague one time tell me, as we were having this discussion we're having now, everybody lies. Everybody lies to someone. That's what they said. I was like, wow. They lied to themselves. They lied to their children. And they went as far as to even say, well, you look at Santa Claus. We have all this whole season, and isn't that lying to our children? I'm like, wow. We have really taken the idea, the thought of deception and lying to a whole nother level. Now, remember, some of you may be saying, well, wait a minute. Let's go back to what we said 2 or 3, 5 minutes ago. Intent. Are we intending to hurt any child with the idea of the Easter Bunny or Santa Claus or things like that?
Right, that part.
Is the intent there? That's why we talked about what is the definition of lying for over 30 minutes. And then we talked about how to determine where and what direction to go in regards to the disseminating information. What's your intent? Is your intent malicious? Is your intent to be hurtful? If it's not, then you have to look at self and ask yourself why in another way. This is a podcast that can go into so many other areas of our lives. You talked about lying to self. When you remember what I said earlier, just because you look and you see shortcomings does not mean that you're short.
Right.
Because you see you've done some things that are not, really nice, does not mean you're not a nice person.
Come on. We all
have a tendency, we're all human. We have humans, we're all human, and we all have our shortcomings.
Come on.
But we strive, and that is the point of tonight. We strive to be the best version of ourselves that we can be. And the reason we do that is because every day you wake up could be that day that you have your breakthrough.
Mm.
Every day that you wake up could be the day that you get your harvest,
Come on.
that you get your breakthrough. Every day. So when we do this every week, we do it not because we don't have anything else to do, not because we don't believe in what we're saying. We do it because we are committed to making sure we put information out that can better the quality of your life some kind of way.
Come on, that part.
Now, so much so that we allow for questions, we allow for comments, we invite participation. But if we don't get that like, and we don't get that share, or we don't get that click, we're still going to be here next week.
That part.
We're still going to be here next week, even without that. So as we talk today about you looking at you and your idea about being honest with yourself, with the people around you, whether it's family, friends, or work. Brother Dupree talked about, you know what? I can't do that. I stand before you, watch this, guilty of that. When we first opened up over 20 some years ago, I got to the point where I was telling everybody, yeah. Will you come? Yeah. And then it got to the point where we started getting phone calls where you never showed up. And I'm like, oh, I forgot.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to get pulled to the side. And people started saying, you can't say yes all the time. It's only 24 hours in a day.
Come on.
I had to start being, I can do it. I can do it. I couldn't do it.
Mm.
And I had to be honest with myself.
Because your mental health matters.
My mental health mattered. And I didn't want people to think I was lying. Because you're going to come? Yeah, I'm going to come. And I didn't show up. So they started saying, well, you never intended. Oh, I did. I had good intentions.
Mm.
But I had 3 other things booked at the same time. So as we close, I'm going to give Brother Dupree, because I know we went through the election cycle and we have it coming back up. Please make a plea to these folks to get out and make that choice.
So family, listen, I know a lot of folks yesterday saw the elections, and, you know, people are trying to be a certain way about certain folk, like what happened in Kentucky. Let me tell y'all something. And y'all, you know, a lot of things that people say sound good, but it actually, once you cut through it, it ain't got no meat to it. So politics are politics. Too many times we take politics to be personal. Politics is politics. Understand, I don't agree with everything with politics. You know, the Republican African-American individual that ran against the Democrat, Mr. Brashear, Governor Brashear, who is, to me, an outstanding governor in Kentucky. You know, I understand this is the brother who didn't prosecute the people with Breonna Taylor, and folks today are like, man, look at it. Karma done came back. This man is a wealthy lawyer. Unless he lost all his wealth in the election, Karma ain't did nothing. He just lost the race. And that's how y'all got to start looking at these political races. It's a political race. You got to look at also what is connected to the political race, the ideologies, and how does it really affect you? And at the end of the day, if you're not voting, you can't be complaining. Too many people are complaining who don't even go vote. But if you are going to vote, get engaged, get involved, get registered, get informed about the issues that matter to you, and pick the best person that you think will represent you. And once you get that person in office, hold them accountable to what they have said they were going to do. It is still your responsibility as the individual who put that person in office to hold them accountable. And stop with the shenanigans and all the charades of this, that, these, those, and the third. Because at the end of the day, Everybody's got their good points and their bad points. Everybody's got some things that they did right and wrong. And everybody's got some things that is this or that. But like I tell folks, if you decide to be a part of the Republican Party, you have to adhere to that R. If you decide to be a part of the Democratic Party, you got to adhere to that D. If you decide to be an independent, you got to adhere to the I. Anytime you pledge yourself to a party, that party has its own ideology that you have to adhere to. So if their ideology doesn't match with what's going on in our communities, them saying they're going to do what they're going to do for you, they may or may not do. But if they make a promise, make them hold to their promise. Keep their feet to the fire and say, you promise, when are you going to deliver? Because we delivered the vote that got you in office. With that being said, I can't tell you who to vote for, how to vote, but I can tell you this. If you do cast a vote, hold the individuals accountable and responsible for the promises they made to you to get your vote. With that being said, let me turn it over to my brother, Edwin A. Brown.
I don't believe there's anything else to be said. I believe what you just said is putting it where the goats can get it. It's as simple as this. If someone tells you something, hold them accountable. Don't just give them your vote because they look like you, they sound like you. Give them their vote because they think like you. So if nobody else told you today, we love you. See y'all next week. Peace.